Hey, everybody. Welcome back to University of Adversity. I'm your host, Lance Essihos. We got a great episode for you today. We have the one and only Harris Goldberg joining us today. Harris has been a film director and a writer for decades. And today we get to peel back the curtain into his life, into some of his stories, into his thought process of what it takes to create success in this business. Such an awesome guy, such a unique perspective. And for 4 years of doing this show, I've never had a director, a filmmaker come on the show and get to kind of see what that life's all about. So this was a really interesting episode. Some of the movies and some of the people, just to give you a little bit of a sneak peek, are I don't know if you guys remember from the 90s, but there was a hilarious movie called Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, which he wrote and directed, which was a huge hit. He's also worked, also another movie, Master of Disguise, and he's also worked with people such as Mathew Perry from Friends. And he goes into some stories around that time, the 90s, the 2000s, even before, around what it was all like and working with these actors and kind of like his thought process and everything. Me, I'm a curious person, so I wanted to do the best I could to pull out as much as I can for you guys and to get some value. So I really enjoyed this conversation. Harris is like a first class guy, and I think you guys will really, really enjoy this. So if you're somebody that is a creator of any kind and you want to know what it takes to be successful, listen to this right to the end, and I promise you, you'll love it. All right. Enjoy the episode. Harris Goldberg coming right up. Here we go. Harris, welcome to University of Adversity, my man. So good to have you with us today.
Thank you, good sir. It's good to see you and meet you and over this technology wonderland.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? It's so cool to be able to do this stuff, to be able to connect with people all over the world. I obviously would rather do it in person, but we gotta do what we can, right?
Yeah, yeah, true.
So
Yeah.
you're a fellow Canadian. We're both
Fellow
Canadian.
Canadian.
You grew
Yeah.
up in Hamilton, Ontario. Walk us through a little bit of what that was like for you, because I'm so curious as to how the path to how someone like you gets into show business, into the movie world, especially in the time when you did. It's so interesting for me. So tell us what it was like for you growing up there and kind of pave the way for us a little bit.
Well, I had a bit of a advantage in that I have an older brother named Dan. And I grew up about 2 blocks away from McMaster University. Now, at that time, my brother, who was 11 years older, I think, he was best friends with a guy named Ivan Wright.
Mm.
And, Ivan, went on to, well, I'll tell you this trajectory. So they had the thing called the McMaster Film Board, which was a very vibrant 60s film thing. And so they started to make movies. And there were all the Second City guys were at that university. So Rick Moranis, Dave Thomas, Eugene Levy. Actually, I think Rick was not there. And so all those guys, it was a very comedic sort of core fertile ground. So my brother and Ivan started making movies, and they started to get a name for themselves. They then, over the summer, one year, wrote a summer camp movie that became Meatballs with Bill Murray. And that just became, and Ivan directed it, and my brother wrote it and produced it. And it just became this bizarre Canadian hit. It was the most successful film Canada had up until that point. So I had always been entertainment based as a kid. Like I did magic as a kid. I was performing stand-up comedy when I was 15, 16. I was doing radio shows. But what I wanted to be was a tennis pro. I was absolutely, I wanted to be the number one tennis player, whatever. So I played tennis like all day, every day. You got off school. That's what I was going to do. I got to be pretty good. I got to be ranked in Canada, and I thought, that's what I'll do. But at the same time, I was very interested in, because of the influence of watching my brother, he moved to California, and then they did Stripes with Bill Murray, the second film. So suddenly there were these big guys. I'm like, wow. Meanwhile, I'm, going down the tennis route. I eventually ended up going on sort of the semi-pro circuit. I went to the States, and it was a real eye opener for me because
Mm.
I met some of the top players all over the world, and I realized, I mean, I was good, but I didn't have the head for it because the killer instinct was that these guys had was brutal.
Mm.
I used to say I had the strokes, but I didn't quite have the head. And then I had a pivotal match with a really good player who ended up being in the top 10 eventually. And I got so destroyed that it was like an eye opener where it was like God looking down and going, "Oh, you want to make this your living?" So I was pretty devastated because I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went to teach tennis at Club Med for 6 months, which was, I actually ended up writing a TV show about it called Stuck in Paradise because I thought it was going to be a real running away getaway. And it was a nightmare. I was trapped. I couldn't get off it. It was weird people. They wouldn't give me my passport back and I had to fill out my contract. So anyway, so I came back and I didn't know what I was going to do. I was in my 20s. So I wrote a screenplay one summer. I went to college and after college, I wrote a screenplay. I had a friend of mine who was also a stand-up comic and a writer. He helped me with it as well, or I helped him. We got some money from the Canadian government, from Telefilm Canada. We went down to Los Angeles for the first time for 2 weeks. And when I got there, it was a magical, like I'd never seen palm trees. It was, as soon as I got there, I went, this is where I'm supposed to be. It all came together. And I just became a hustling, crazy man. I mean, I was just calling, people from the trade magazines, studios. Anyway, we sold the screenplay within a week to National Lampoon.
Well, that's a big company to sell to. Or that's
Yeah, and it was just, we got paid more money than I'd never seen before, both of us.
What year was this? Just to put into context for people. So, and you go down, what year was this? And you sold it to National Lampoon.
This was 1988.
Oh, wow. So that
Okay.
was like the,
Yeah. So, and that was a magical time in Hollywood because it was still the tail end of the old Hollywood system. So there was
right.
6 studios, just, it's Fox, Warner Brothers, Universal, Disney, Paramount, a couple others. It was all run by like these real characters who had been in the business forever. Guys you've heard of, Bob Evans, who did, was head of Paramount and did The Godfather, all these guys. And because of my tennis, at that time, tennis was the boom. There's no cell phones, there was no internet. So people would meet at their places, at their homes, their estates on the tennis court. And I very quickly got a reputation as, oh, I want Harris to play. So I was like a ringer, basically.
Oh,
So I had the legitimacy of selling the script. And then we got an agent, my partner and I, at William Morris. And I was going, I'm not leaving. So I'm there as a Canadian. I don't have a green card. I don't have anything. I'm just there and then Tom went back. It's his name, Tom Nursel. Came back to Canada. I decided I'm staying. So I found an apartment and I said, I'm not going back to Canada. And I didn't. So I started just getting into the whole LA thing very quickly through the tennis. I mean, I was playing it, I'm not kidding, Jack Nicholson's house, Barbara Streisand's house.
wow.
People would show up, but I was basically on their teams because it was very competitive, of teams that didn't want to lose. So they went, oh, I'll play with Harris. So I would be like this proverbial fly on the wall, listening to the deals. And I became very relaxed among these guys because I could make them laugh. They knew I had sold a script. They knew I was at William Morris. So I slowly started to get in. Anyway, that was my sort of foray into LA. And I eventually, I had my car driven down. I never went back. I got rid of my Canadian place. I got, H-1 visas for a while. And then we wrote another screenplay and that got picked up by Disney and made, which I didn't know was, am I giving you too much detail by the way?
No, this is great.
Okay.
Which one got picked up by Disney?
Okay, this was 1989, and it was called I'll Be Home for Christmas. It was actually an Adam Sandler movie, so he was going to be in it.
Right.
It was a great script. So Disney was so impressed with the script, they offered us a 3-picture deal, which I didn't even know what that was really.
Wow.
So you go into Disney, they treat us like, I mean, it was magic. I thought this is the greatest job in the world. I didn't know it was any, because right there, Tom and I were kind of the new flavor. We hadn't screwed up yet. So we were like the new guys, because we sold the script so fast, it got greenlit. So we made this multi-picture deal, and now we're in. So we're getting all this money, from the studio to write whenever we want. They would call us in and say, here's the movies we're doing next year. Which one do you want to write? Mighty Ducks, this. And we would just go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And we thought,
Wow.
this is the way it is. And they would screen movies for us in their own, like we'd have our own theater at Disney. And they'd say, go watch this. And it'd just be Tom and I drinking cappuccinos. Anyway, long story short, Tom kept going back and forth. I stayed. And the more I stayed, the more people I was meeting. And it was happening very, very quickly. Okay. So the movie then got made, but instead of it being an Adam Sandler college-based comedy, Disney had a deal with Taylor Thomas at the time. I don't know if you remember him. But
I
he was
remember
like-
as a kid. I
mean,
mean, I'm
he was
30. I'm 39, so that kid was like all the girls that I went to school
Yeah.
with in the grade 6 loved him. I'd be like, why do you like that guy so much?
Yeah. So he was on that Tim Allen show.
Yeah, Home Improvement. For everybody
Improvement.
listening, he was like the star teenage heartthrob in the Bop magazines and Home Improvement, and he was the kid. He was that kid. Let's just preface it like that.
So they said, can you rewrite this for him? And we said, well, that's a whole different movie because he's a high school kid. But the marketing department said, that's what we're doing. And we were kind of disappointed, but we redid it. We didn't like it nearly as much because the heck took off a lot of the edge.
Yeah.
And anyway, the movie got made. I didn't like it, to be honest.
Mm.
I was very disappointed. It wasn't even like the script at all. It was exciting to see our first movie and our names up in the theater because they didn't, at that time, there was no internet, no online streaming. It was just theaters, and it would be out there for 2 months, your movie with like 6 others. And then it would be 6 months later, it would go to DVD. So it was a
Yeah.
big deal to get it into a theater. Like everyone knew your name and everything. So it came out, but it didn't do well. It just didn't. So suddenly that was the first kind of like, oh, they got it made, and money talks in Hollywood. If it doesn't make money, it's a little bit of a black market.
I'm so curious. I just want to interject one question here about this. When you make a movie,
Yeah.
what are you like? How do you know if it's going to be good or not? Like, when you make one, do you go into it feeling like this is awesome? Because I've heard that some people say they think it's going to be great and it's not. And then sometimes they go into it thinking it's not going to be, and it's like a surprise. Like what was that feeling like back then when you go into something? Do you kind of know, or do you just, or
No.
just in general, do people just kind of go in just like hoping for the best? Because there isn't streaming. It's kind of like, and what is it that makes something good? Like
Well, that's a good question. And it even to today, this goes for today. And it's the one thing I tell young people that are coming up. What's the guy's name? William Goldman,
Mm.
who wrote one of the Academy Award for Butch Cassidy and a Sundance Kid as a screenwriter. He wrote Marathon Man. He wrote all kinds. He's a great writer, one of the great writers. He had a quote that he said, in Hollywood, you only need to know one thing. No one knows anything. And it's true. Everyone you meet has an opinion, and the executives, the agents, the producers, the actors, everyone goes, this is going to be a hit. And all the decisions are made just on what if. It's like the stock market. Okay. But the only thing you can do really is you have an idea that you like personally. So if there's a subject matter that's important to me, usually a theme, something that in my own life, like in my case, I always find it's a search for family or a search for safety underneath it. So the character, I'm drawn to sort of solitary characters that have to go through something. And then I think, is this something I would want to see? Would I pay $12 or at that time, $7 to go see this? And that's it. That's all I can do. And I write what I would love to go see and hope that there'll be a lot of other people who will feel the same way. Okay. So once you do that, the problem is as soon as you finish it, you hand it over to the powers that be, everybody starts changing it. Okay. What about this? And because everyone thinks they have well, I think we should do this. And the marketing department has a point of view of how do we get more demographics? You know, if we do this, if we make it more sexy, if we make it more violent, if we make it more this, if we make the character this, we'll be able to attract this. And that's where it starts to go downhill. Okay. So what happens when any movie ever comes out or TV show, everyone has high hopes. And that's why on Friday night, the movies would always come up Friday night. And then it would take 2 days to get the returns. And sometimes they'd think it was going to be the biggest movie ever, and it would flop and almost destroy the studio because they'd lose, you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they go, what happened? Because you never know what the audience is going to go see on the day. Same thing when sleeper movies, little small movies come out and they think, we're just going to put it in a few markets or whatever. And suddenly it explodes and you go, what? My big fat Greek wedding, you know, these movies that cost nothing. And then what was the one? Blair Witch, you know, these little. So no, nobody knows anything. But they will not admit it or they don't believe it. But I know that's why all I can do is go, what is it that I want to see and do the best job I can. And then if they want to change it, then I get very political. You know, what's worth fighting for? What's not worth fighting for? Am I directing it? If I'm directing it, it's a different feeling than if I'm just selling the script and they're saying we want to pay for it. Because basically what you're doing is taking the money and walking away. So it's an emotional roller coaster because you're dealing in a business where it's all smoke and mirror. Not all, but there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And you can't really believe anything, but it's so seductive to believe everything. So that took me a long time to learn that, by the way, because so.
The 90s were just such an interesting era for movies. Like such good movies, so many good directors. And it's changed so much now, right? Like it's all about the big box office, you know, all of these like Marvel movies and stuff. You don't find a lot of the smaller movies, right? Like you did in the 90s.
Well,
Like
that's
it's
a
a lot
good point.
different.
Yeah, I mean, it's all if you've gone through enough cycles, okay? Because I love history of movies, so I watch the cyclical business aspect, and I've also been through 80s, 90s, 2000s now going.
Yeah.
So you see the cyclical and you realize it all repeats itself eventually. There's waves, okay? Now back in the 90s, because you only had 6 studios that were all owned individually, there were all kinds of movies. There were $5 million movies. There were $12 million movies. The most expensive movie at that time was 20. And so you had each studio was making 25 to 50 movies a year. So you had all these great ideas. And what they would do, the mindset was as the studio executives or head would say, let's make 50 movies. We're going to send them out there. Out of the 50, we might have 8 or 9 big hits. And then we'll have, 10 or 12 to 15 medium hits. And then the rest will underperform. But at the end of the year, we're going to have a profit doing all that. Okay. And then what happened was big corporations started to buy up these studios. So Sony would buy Columbia, Disney was bought, all these. So these bigger companies, Gulf and Western, Paramount. So these big companies were going, oh, this is just a piece of our mega business. We want to make money. And what happened was everything changed the day that Jim Carrey did, I think it was Masked. And I had the same attorney Jim had.
Oh, wow.
And I was in her office when she got the unprecedented amount of $20 million picture for that movie for Jim. And that from like the most an actor would have gotten at that time is 3.
Yeah.
3, 4. So by getting 20, it completely skewed everything because every actor now wanted to get 20. It pushed the budgets up on all the movies. So suddenly movies had to become bigger. The companies that now own these smaller studios were going like, we want big. We want to make $100 million in a weekend, not 3 months. We don't want, like I did a movie called Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo.
Oh yeah. Classic.
Okay. That cost $16 million and it made $58 million theatrically and about 115 worldwide. And then on video, same thing. But for Disney, that was considered a hit movie. Now they would want nothing. We want to make $400 million. So what they've done is by having these Marvel movies by definition, Star Wars, Marvel, whatever, they're such big franchises. They cost a fortune to make, but they make so much money because they just kind of globally hit it. They're like giant video games.
Yeah.
We're at the point of no return where everyone wants that money. So you don't get those. Nobody wants to do no one wants to do, for the most part, smaller, more interesting movies, character driven, the stuff that we're talking about in the 90s. So it's a different mindset, but it's starting to change around. People are getting tired of just the in your face, theatrical experience.
Yeah. How has the change over the decades changed your writing style? Because are you actually writing the way you want? Or is it like skewed because you have to write a certain way as time changes? Like, how has
Yeah,
that been for you?
That's a good. The only change I would say is that what I would do before if I thought of a good character or a good situation, I would play it out. If it was a romantic comedy, it was a small drama, and there were certain limitations. But now, because the landscape is so big, I first think of a big idea. So it's usually action or thriller. It's often sci-fi. It's something where you go, oh, wow.
How do you get those big ideas? Let's start there. How do you get those? And then let's like distill it down. How do you get those big ideas?
Well, first of all, I'm the kind of, okay, well, I have like a notebook everywhere I go. So I have one
Okay.
in my car. I have one by my bed. I always have one on my small notebook. So when I walk around, I just have this, everything seems like an idea to me. So I'm talking to you now and I'm going, oh, what if right now I'm looking at you and suddenly someone just grabbed you and you kidnapped you. And I'm going, Lance, I go, well, that's an interesting beginning to a movie. Like, where is he? And now this stranger, me, has to go, the guy no one believes me. And so I decide I got to go find this guy. Now that's the beginning of a movie. So then I start with an idea where you kind of tickles you a little bit. And then I go, what could that be about? And then what I do is think of a character. So I go, oh, well, usually it's me. Like I go, if I was in that situation, is it fun or is it exciting or what could happen? And then you just start thinking about it. And then I write it down. So I might write it down as I'll go on the notebook. I have various things like character, TV idea, movie idea, concept, whatever it is. I put it under there and I just leave it. So at the end of every month, I might have 100 of them. And so if I'm finished a new project, I go, oh, I wonder if I have anything in my note thing. And I start looking and out of those ideas, a handful really stick out and I can't forget them. And I still don't write them. And I just start thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And then if it sticks, I start thinking of very interesting, oh, it could go here. It could go here. And if I could think of the ending, oh, it could end here. And I go, I get that hairs on the back of my head. I circle that one. I go, that's a keeper. Mm. And then when I actually finish a project, because sometimes it takes up to 6-8 months to write I write fast, but for a feature, it's hard. I know I'm giving you too much here, but.
No, this is great. Love this.
Here's the other thing is that when I first started, I used to outline everything first. So I would write down exactly where I'm going for the whole movie. Then I would start writing. I stopped doing that. And because I found it was boring. I wasn't enjoying it because I already worked it out. And I didn't want to go back and rewrite. So I changed it to every morning when I wake up to start writing, I have an endpoint and I don't know where the character's going. And I go, what can I do today that's going to turn me on? And that's what makes writing fun for me because I don't know where it's going. But it's also scary because you don't know where it's going. But after you do it a lot, you start to get used to it. And then it becomes the driving force in your writing style. So I've learned to do that. So that's how I write now. But you have to do it a lot. It's practice. And so then what I do is I take the smaller idea, the character stuff, and I shove it into a bigger idea so that the audience doesn't quite know that I'm actually, oh, he's putting in a heartfelt he's putting in a theme. And they don't see it coming. So they're watching the bigger thing to go, oh, let's go see that movie. And then hopefully they'll come out and go, God, that really felt. So now you got the double whammy. You get them in, but you've actually sort of, you've done whatever. You've entertained them in a way that you sort of said something. So it's kind of a little bit of a balancing act.
It's fascinating to me how, as a director or writer, how you can pull people's strings through just like these, because I only was in drama class, so I only got that that aspect of it. But when I saw that it's just shot scene by scene, just this this cut, and then it's all pieced together. And some of the stuff is filmed at different times. And the fact that it can just be intertwined into this beautiful thing that is so emotionally able to like be able to pull people's strings and leave people feeling a certain way is just so fascinating. The story and how it's all tied together. It's like
I think if
it's
you talk to
magic.
any, you
It's
talk to any
magic.
filmmaker, okay, director, I've friends who are fellow filmmakers. We all say the same thing. It's a miracle a movie gets made because when you're actually doing it and you're the director, which can be terrifying. You have 150 people, you got all these logistics, and you go, how the heck am I going to make this? And then you're just day after day, you're putting these little bits together and you're just praying that, did you capture the right, performance here? Is this going to cut together, whatever? And at the end of this, whatever, 4 to 10 week shoot, you have all this footage and then it has to be, you have to switch it over and it's all on this, you go into post production and that's where you're really kind of making the movie. And,
Yeah.
and, and it's, and when it does come together, and sometimes it's right down to the music and you put the music on and you go, oh, it works. It is magical.
That's another thing. It's like the choice of the music. And it's so yeah, like for me, I'm so interested in the creative process of this, how somebody like yourself is able to get an idea and then trust that it's going to work out and that the next thing will come. And I guess why I'm so interested in it is because I just wrote a book and I watched how it unfolds like that. It's like you take the first couple steps and then more opens up, but you don't have all the answers right in the
Oh,
beginning. And you have to trust in like there's like a guidance or like your intuition where it's like, this is gonna work out. I don't have it now. I'm a little bit blocked, but I know it's gonna happen. And
it's like giving, it's brutal. It's
yeah,
brutal, satisfying, but it's like giving birth. Not that I wouldn't know, but you go, I can't tell you I just about finished a screenplay. It's been taking me 8 months and it's been the hardest thing I've ever written. And I wanted to quit 1,000 times. So I went,
why
no,
didn't you quit? Why didn't you quit?
because I've done it so many times and there's something about the character. I know I can do this. And I was compelled to finish it at all costs and I couldn't leave it alone. But I would have 3 days where I just didn't know what to do. I'd go for long 4-hour walks going, what's the next beat? How do I? And then I go, I can't do it. I can't do it. And then I might see an old movie or I might see something on my walk or I might see something. And then suddenly I go, what if? And then it opens up the next section. Oh my God, I know where to go next. And then I get really excited. So I go to that point, which might be like another 10 pages or something. And then I might get stuck again. But because I conquered the last one, I go, I know I can do this for another X amount of times to get to the end.
Mm.
And then you just, from doing it, like once if you're a craftsman and you make a chair and you keep making chairs and eventually you go, I know how to make a chair. I don't know I hope it's going to be balanced. I hope people are going to aesthetically like it. So I pray at the end. But then what happens is when you finish this stuff and you get a positive reaction. So your manager or agent says, hey, this is really good. Or somebody calls and goes, hey, I just read it. This really, then you start going, oh, maybe I'm okay. And then some people go, I didn't buy it. And you go, oh, maybe I'm,
Uh,
but the better you get now, when I finish something, more often than not, I know it's a pretty good read. Now, whether it gets made or not, who knows?
Mm.
But I know it's going to stand up against the competition or there's going to be, but it's taken me 30 years of doing it to get any good at it. I mean, I don't think I was a great writer when I started. I just enjoyed doing it. I liked being solitary. I could write 10 hours a day if I wanted to and be okay with it. I got lost in it and I just learned how to do it. So, but it's like any art. It's not just writing, it's music, it's painting. It's, you have to be a particular kind of person. It's not for the faint of heart.
mm.
So I know a lot of people don't want to write, but they never actually write.
Why is that? Can we dive into that more?
Yeah.
Because what is that and why is that?
Because it's hard. Just think about
Yeah.
it. I wake up at, okay, here's my thing. I wake up at 5 in the morning. Okay. I make myself a coffee. I'm right in front of the computer. You look at that script again, you go, "Ugh." And I go, I'm now going to be staring at this screen for 3 different 3-hour sessions today. Okay. Every day, 7 days a week. Sometimes not 9 hours, but always 6 hours. But I like it. Like I enjoy being, I'm alone. I lose myself in it. I have a way I break up the day with, I work out a lot. So I have 2 I look forward to that. Little things make me, I go, oh, am I going to have for dinner tonight? And then I write something. I like the feeling of completion, but it's a hard road. And you look at other people who are going to their to jobs and they're just, they're getting a regular paycheck. This is also a very mercurial business. So it's feast or famine. So you can make a ton of money and then nothing, ton of money and nothing. So you have to be okay with that kind of feast or famine kind of thing.
Trust the unknown.
Yeah, it's scary. I must have 7, 8 projects that are TV and features right now that are at various stages. I don't know which one's going to go. And if a financial guy said, "Hey, what's your year going to look like?" I have no idea. It's like you're in Vegas, but I've been doing it so long, I'm just used to it. But it's a hard road. It really is.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine that you just get better at just trusting the process. You've done it, and it's like you must just, you know what? This is just part of it. You like you said, the hills and valleys of it. You when you're in that flow, you just ride it out, and then when you're not, you just
Yeah, and it's
accept it.
seductive. When you have success and
Mm.
people know about it, you almost feel like you go, "Oh, I did that." They go, "You did that?" It's a great icebreaker, and you feel like you want to do it again.
Yeah.
Want to get back into you want that attention. You want that, there's nothing like being when you're in a theater and you hear a bunch of people laughing or your jokes become, I remember when Deuce Bigalow came out, which was an okay movie. I didn't love it, but it did well. I remember I was watching the Academy Awards that year and the host was Billy Crystal. And the movie
Best.
was number 3 in the box office, but no, I didn't think, big deal. And he came out after the commercial and he goes to the worldwide, he goes, "This just in, the Pope's favorite joke, their favorite movie is Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo." And I went, "Oh my God," like just something I wrote, just been, and that was a real high because he felt like, I mean, this is a little, I mean, I don't know how meaningful it is, but it's hard not to feel like you want to be, you make a mark or you want people to know you or you mistakenly, I think it's like attention and love or something. And so there's a lot
Mhm.
of that too. You're constantly playing that game.
Was it tough? Well, I mean, your brother was very successful as well, right? Was it tough kind of like having his success over you and like you want to prove
Yeah.
that you got it as well?
And real driving for it. Now, my brother, he went on to do some he did the Hangovers and did, Space Jam, the
Old
first one,
school, right?
old
Private
school.
parts. Some
It
of the
goes on and on.
funniest.
So he and I, there was actually a point when I was in Los Angeles that we actually started working together as partners, which I was shocked that he would do that. But he was just at a stage where he just said, "Do you want to partner up?" And I was in heaven. I mean, because I worshiped the guy. I thought I never was happier in my life than when I was working. And I just felt my life is going to be great. And then after about 8 months or so, we finally set up a couple of projects, but something happened and we split up. And that was probably one of the most, difficult things I ever went through. But yes, I constantly find is it a driving thing? Yeah, there's something there. Yeah, there's something there. You want to be as good. You want it's the older brother thing. You want their
Totally.
attention. You want their pat in the back. You want them to say you're good, you're okay. And that's tough. Yeah.
What was the hardest part looking back? Because I know that you had quite a bit of anxiety. I think we all go through that at certain times, and I'd love to learn more about that. Would you say that was the hardest part, or maybe walk us through some of like those moments, those dark moments
Okay.
that you made it through. Because I think, you know, a lot of people see, I mean, you hear about the successes, right? You hear about what went well, but what I'm always fascinated with is like how you had the resilience to keep going during some of the dark shit, you know, and make it out of there.
Well, I had a particularly well, I was there when I was the first 3 or 4 years, I was really driving hard. I mean, I was just, you know, networking and writing and tenant, everything. And I found the stress was really high, but I didn't realize it. But I
Mm,
kept pushing. I'd never take a vacation. I was always questioning, what else can I do? What have I missed? What's the other guy doing that I'm not doing? I'll come up with another idea. And I was really driving myself into the ground. And then I started to get this weird physical symptom. So I started to sort of drive around, walk around. And I felt a little disconnected, like you're kind of watching yourself. And I remember saying to myself then, God, I don't feel the way I did when I used to play tennis and I was alive and alert and sharp. I just sort of feel numb.
mm,
Okay. But I just kept pushing myself. And then I wasn't sleeping or anything. And then I'd never touched a drug in my life. Okay. I was very healthy, but I started to smoke a little marijuana and I found, oh my God, I sleep well. I never felt it stopped my brain for a couple hours. I would just go, wow. So I would do it very selectively. I go, oh, that's my treat. It's like having almost like a drink with a Scott. And I go, oh, 3 weeks have gone by. Maybe it'll always be by myself or whatever. And for a little while, I really was going, hey, this is, as long as I'm hurting my lungs, I think this could be like just, anyway, I kept pushing myself. And then one day I actually made a movie about this called Numb with Mathew Perry.
yeah.
And what happened was, I mean, I might be going into too much detail, but I had a new partner and we came up with an idea and we sold it. But it was on a bidding war. And what that means is there's multiple studios bidding for that same idea, which is pretty rare. So it was a very exciting day. So yeah, everyone's calling and guys, we'll give you this, we'll give you this. So no, do it here. So it was really quite stressful. Anyway, we ended up making the deal. And then that night, instead of being happy about it, I dreaded it. I didn't want to work with this guy. I didn't want to write this idea. I felt like I could have got better. I was missing my brother. I was strangely low. So the new partner and I went out and decided to have dinner with a friend. And the friend was a photographer. Went back to her place and she said, hey, do you want to smoke a joint? I said, yeah, I just want to go to sleep. So we started to pass around this thing. And I don't know what happened. Maybe it was too strong or I smoked. But anyway, I had a massive panic attack. I mean, it scared the crap. I'd never had that. And I was fine afterwards, but it was scary. And then and then I decided I got to go back to Canada, visit my family because it'd been years. I was so tired. I just wanted to get away from California. So I booked a trip home for 5 weeks later to go see, and I was really excited to see my friends, go back to Canada. And during those 5 weeks, I didn't relax. I pushed even harder to finish this Universal movie. So I was driving myself. The night before I'm supposed to fly back, I had another panic attack. Same thing, like I wouldn't smoke pot again. I said, that's it. But I still had that same feeling. Like, oh my God, like what is this still in my system? I'm going, what the? And then I was okay. And
Can you
then
explain what happened just for people? Like what did it feel like? I just want to like,
felt like it was sort of like I was sort of okay. And then suddenly I just had this feeling of like being like this anxiety coming up, like it was like in your stomach and it kind of,
did you have like a heart attack? Like your heart was going to come out of feel like it's going to pop out of your chest kind of thing?
yeah, I was breathing and it's hard. And you just felt like something really horrendous is about to happen and your life is at stake. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I think I'm going to die and nobody else gets it. It's just
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And they're all looking at you kind of, in some cases, sort of laughing, smiling. And you're going, oh, I'm in real deep trouble here and I can't get out of it. I can't. And this is the first time I haven't been able to control myself in that way because I've always been pretty good at, if I do something physically. So as soon as I got back to Canada, the day I touched down, I completely crashed. And that threw me into I've now become very well versed in what was going on, but it was like panic attacks, constant anxiety. I had this depersonalized feeling all the time where I was detached all the time. And, no one would know, but I thought, oh, I'm in deep trouble here. And then I came back to LA and I was a mess. I mean, I was amazed I got through each day, to be honest with you. I was amazed I survived, but I started to research it, talk to people. It was terrifying. And it went on for a really long time. And that's when I decided I can't write these big, stupid comedies anymore. These Adam Sandler movies, I said, I can't do it. So I sat down and I just wrote, I said, I'm going to write about what happened to me. So I wrote this journalistic, it was almost a cathartic thing. And that became Numb. Never thought it would get made in a million years. I finished the script. I gave it to a friend of mine who was a producer of a movie called Rushmore, Jason Schwartzman movie back then, which was a great little movie. He loved it. And I was shocked. He gave it to Mathew Perry. Mathew called me out of the blue. Like, he goes, I have to play this part. I have to meet you right now. And I go, wow. He goes, I'll meet you. And literally 5 minutes later, we were meeting. He goes, I have to play this part. And that started this whole fast thing where suddenly I'm directing this movie with Mathew. And it just all happened quickly. I didn't know how I felt about it because it was so autobiographical. I didn't want to tell anyone it was on because it was still raw. So here I am in Vancouver, shot in Vancouver, with all these actors, Mary Steenburgen and all this, and I'm directing what's literally happening to me in real time on the screen. It was the weirdest, it was so odd. And that came out. I don't know how I finished it, but it had this weird resonating effect because no one ever heard of it. No one knew much about anxiety, or they didn't know a lot about it. There wasn't a lot out there.
Yeah, that's true.
So suddenly that opened a whole discussion with people, which I liked. Like I felt, oh, this is making a bit of a difference. And that was probably my lowest point, not making the movie, but before when I crashed like that, because I was very humbled by, oh, wow, if you're not careful, life can throw you a loop and it's frightening.
Yeah, and that would have been what, late 90s, like primetime Friends days when Mathew
No,
Perry
that
wrote
was like 93.
Oh, so it was before his Friends days. Because
No,
Friends started in 95 and then it went on to be like, the biggest.
oh, well, maybe it was that. He had been on Friends. That's
Oh,
for sure.
yeah. Yeah. So that would have been, because I think Friends started in 95. And it's crazy because Mathew Perry talks about his story now. Like it was just,
Oh, yeah, they must have been because I wrote this in 2004.
yeah.
So
For
I
sure.
wrote it quite a bit. Like took me about a decade to get a handle on this thing.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that he wanted to play it, right? Because now that you learn more about his story and like it's crazy some of the stuff he talks about, right? Because his book's out now and
Well, he was like, I mean, he was in recovery when I met him. He just got a rough time. So we really bonded.
Yeah, I bet.
We became like brothers. I saw him every day we just were like this. And, I think he needed this it was weird because I was going, I'm trying to sort of tell him, this is what I went through. And he's trying to do it the way he went through it. But we were both dealing with the same desperation.
Right.
So, but I knew he was dealing with all this stuff back then, but he told me he had it under control and it was over, but obviously it wasn't. And, he was look, I love Mathew. He's great. He's so talented. I was very proud of him for doing this, but he's, like both a little bit tortured sometimes, but I was proud of him for writing the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see because someone like that, you see him. I mean, that was in my youth watching that, and you see these different. He looks different in certain parts of his life, and then he talks about when I was there, I was doing this, and when I was there, I was doing this, and I can see myself, and it's interesting because, like, I always ask myself, like, how the hell can these guys keep it together? Like, you must have seen so much stuff. You must have just did it blow your mind sometimes, like, seeing some of these people and how they're able to keep their lives together through this craziness?
Well, because I was sort of for a while, like a go-to guy, like in other words, they go, hey, go write a movie with Rob Schneider or Dana Carvey or Matthew, whatever. So I would sort of become very close with these guys for about a year or so. And we were like, every day. And then I realized, oh, this isn't going to last long. this is very temporary. And I watched them a lot, and they were all kind of the same. They were they were drawn to the attention and the success they had. Like they were trying to still grab, like, so if they were on SNL, they want to regain that. Mathew, despite the fact where he goes, I hate being out in public. I don't want to, he loved being out in public. I mean, we couldn't go out without, I'd noticed, he always was out there, and I couldn't meet him without going to some club, and he needed the stimulation. I'd go, why are we, I don't get it. Like, why are we, but I realized, when you're in that Hollywood system, and I'm a little bit like it too, having been in Canada since the pandemic, it's like being in war. You get used to the traumatic highs and lows of it, because it might be stressful, but things happen there that don't happen anywhere else. You meet people, you have experiences that just don't happen in other parts of the world. And so the opportunity is there for what if? What if I mean, I can't tell you how many things got made, movies, whatever, just bumping into some, actor at a coffee shop. You sit down, they go, oh, you did that? Oh yeah. And you start talking, and before you know it, hey, I got an idea. And you're onto something. It just doesn't happen other places. So all these guys, I thought that it was very material. So they get high and low. And I think they're all prone to that for the most part. And some people are more prone than others. But it's an insidious, it's wonderful, but it's insidious because it's rejection, and then your people love you. It's like back and forth. It's never the same. So you're always going to that elusive. And now it's even more difficult because everyone's doing podcasts and YouTube. And back then it was like, if you wanted to do this, it would cost you $200,000.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
I mean, there's no way to express yourself. Now it's just like everyone can have, 2 million hits if they have the right thing on without costing much.
Yeah, you had to be really, that's what I mean. That's why it's fascinating to hear like your story about being a director or an actor back then, or a screenwriter. Like you had to be really good. A lot of things had to align for you to kind of get yourself in the door. Like what you did with the tennis is so perfect. It's like, hey, I'm playing tennis, I'm easing my way. And it's such an interesting story how that worked out. Like, but you were also talented. So it was kind of like, things just fell into place at your right place at the right time, but you also had skill. And then you were like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I think it still comes down to the material.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I have this sort of theory that if you write something or make something good, it eventually finds it, like this podcast. If it's good enough and it resonates, sometime, somewhere, it's going to click. You don't know where, but the marketplace is always changing. You don't know where or when, but if your stuff's good, it finds the wheel, and then it clicks in, and then it happens.
Yeah.
So I know that the material is everything. Everything else is just opportunity. So if I know I have a good script and a good idea, I have like 5 or 6, 7 right now that are 3 years old, 5 years old, whatever it is. And I'm in a situation, socially or business wise, and someone goes, you know what we really need right now? We need this kind of movie. I go, I think I have one. And I tell them the idea. They go, hey, that's perfect. Now it wasn't perfect 2 years ago. It's perfect now, but it's done. And I know it's good. So I can then go, do you want me to send it to you? Yes. They read it right away because they want it. And they go, hey, this is great. And then suddenly now you've got something going. But the work has already been done. I spent the year writing. So I know I have it in my back pocket. If you don't have that and you just say, I have an idea, and they go, great, I'll go work it out. You don't know what's going to, they'll lose interest in the next, everyone's attention is quite small now. So you have to get in there, set it up very quickly and move fast. So it's,
I love what you said there about if your work is good, eventually it's going to find the right people. And it's such a good thing for people, because I think right now there's this, it has to do with social media and these vanity metrics that are out there, that people are able to manipulate certain things to look almost better than they are, or mislead people. And it becomes this thing like you start to question your own results And if you're at the place where you should be versus seeing somebody else, and then you start to question, well, like, is this actually the right thing? Or this guy's got this, but then you realize that there's like other things, smoke and mirrors, there's like things happening that, I don't that can maybe making it look more successful than it is. And it's this real dance of trusting your art, right? And I guess I'm glad you said it because I think a lot of people get discouraged that, hey, if I don't get this at this time, like comparing myself to this person, then what I'm doing isn't working. And what advice do you have for that person? Like that is doing something, like let's say they're writing a movie or they're writing a book or they're following something, but they may not be getting the results that they may have thought that they projected in their mind.
It's
And
a
they're
good question. It's a
yeah.
very good question, and I have an answer, I think. Great question, actually. It's very dangerous. It's things like social media, everything you're talking about, where the perception of other people can bring you down because you're
Yeah.
comparing, destroy but what you learn after having been through it a lot, and this goes for anything, stock market, it doesn't matter when there's all this noise, okay, opinions and do this and this, and you're going, oh my God, all you have to do is go, it's just noise. It means nothing because it doesn't. And now, how do I back that up? Because I haven't seen one person that you thought was a big actor, a big producer, somebody who looked like they were living large, that didn't have some horrendous thing going on in their life, who was miserable, who had just as many obstacles. And I realized, oh, there is no there.
Mhm.
So the only thing that I can do is I go, keep your eye on the ball. And it's the same thing, fundamentals, good material, good podcast, good stock. Like, don't go for the noise. Okay. Now, once in a while, the noise might be lucky and you hit, but you can't control that. But we can control, if you're a creative person, you go, make this good, because that will get through all the, social media and all the noise if it's good, because people cannot resist good stories, good songs, good podcasts. That's the stuff that resonates. Now, why does it resonate? That's up to the person doing it. The way you're interviewing, the way I write, the way someone writes a song. That's all you got.
Yeah.
But if you learn if that's yours and you learn to stick with it and respect it and just keep going, it will find its way. I don't mean that as a, like some pep talk. It just does. I'm
Yeah.
proof. I'm not some amazingly gifted somebody or whatever, but I didn't know what else I would do. And I decided I have to be good at this. And, you just figure out a way until you get to that point. But you have to be willing to stay laser focused, and you can fall off the wagon and be, oh, I read this about this guy. Oh, I saw this about this person. I'll never make it. How can I be that? And then you just go, it's just noise. It doesn't mean it's just,
Mm.
you can say anything right now. You could put up a thing on your social media where I go, God, Lance has got the greatest life in the world. I don't know what's going on in your life, but I know there's going to be ups and downs, stresses and not non-stresses. So that's a little bit of a secret weapon. That's what I would tell younger people that are starting. Now, it's hard to sometimes buy into that, but it's the truth.
Mm. Well, yeah, that's why I love that, because you got into a business that was basically impossible to get into at that time. You had to be That's why I'm trying to put myself in that mindset that you must have been in to overcome so many of these like no's and this like this little window of opportunity that you got. And it's
I
just
like
like,
I like it as a game.
yeah,
That,
what do
Like
you
I
mean?
like in other words, I would see I'll give you an example that happened 2 years ago. I had a really great detective, not great. I liked it a lot. I wrote a TV pilot about a detective. So I'm watching Sherlock, the UK show with Benedict Cumberbatch one day. I never watched it, but I was watching it. I went, oh, that's pretty good. And I realized how big it was and how successful. And I get to the end credits and I see, oh, who's the producer? And I see her name. So I go, you know what? I wonder if she'd like this. Now, most people would leave it at that. So I go home and I go on the internet and find out, oh, this is her company. I search a while. I find her email address, figure it out. I write her I write her an email. Hey, I told her everything. I can say, oh, I'm the guy who did this and this. So she might have heard of me or might be familiar. And all I do is I go, I send it off. I have a script. Here's the one liner about this. I really like this. So I thought of you when I watched the show. Sometimes you'll never hear anything back. 48 hours later, I get an email. Can you send it to me? Okay. Send her the script. Another day later, love this. We're looking for a new detective show. Sherlock is ending. Can we get on a Zoom? And I go, got it. God, now I don't know what's going to happen, but I go, I got a shot. So we get on. We really hit it off. She's asking me a lot of questions. She goes, I think we can set this up. Lo and behold, I make a deal and I'm doing it with the UK at ITV. I call my manager and tell him this. And he goes, what? Now, it's not to sound like I get a thrill out of going, I wonder if I can get to that person. And after you've done it a number of times, you go, you can get to anyone if it's a good idea. Yeah. And the only thing I had going for me is I knew this was a solid script, or I believed in it. So I was betting on if I can get this in front of her face and she reads 5 or 6 pages, it's going to grab her. And that's all I got. And I do that all the time. It's very seldom that an agent or manager is going to call you and go, hey, Harris, we got this project. I mean, almost all the stuff I have is just from watching something and I go, oh, that person could be sure. And you have to work for it. I mean, I had peers, friends of mine who just want the phone to ring. Literally, and it's just not going to happen in today's world. It's competitive, but I like it. Like I enjoy the hustle of it. So I think if you can get into that mindset and look at it like a chess game, I'm not saying it's not difficult or hard, or you have to it's not nerve wracking, but it's such a satisfying thing when you get to that person and they go, okay, let's do that. And so that's just my way of doing it.
Yeah, I can relate with that. It's true, and it's just funny because sometimes we go through these these moments of disbelief where it's like, no, I don't know. I know I do. There with this, especially doing in this entrepreneurial world and podcast world. There's times you go through these highs, but then you go through these, certain people say no, and you're like, what? What do we mean no? And then you gotta just continue to keep going, right? It's like,
well, I know. Yeah, look, I know. I remember Joe Rogan and Mark Maron when they were stand-ups.
yeah,
Okay, they only started their podcasts because they were on. They couldn't get work as an actor anymore. They were hanging around doing stand-up at this Laugh Factory or what have you, and it was a new thing, and they just started doing these interviews in their bedrooms. But they just kept doing it because they enjoyed it. More and more people. When they hit it big, they were more surprised than anyone. Just like you're doing this, you've got X amount of hundreds of the interviews. All it takes is one, company or one thing to go, hey, that fits in really well with our thing. And then suddenly your life changes and you can't believe it.
yeah,
Every time that I get a deal or another opportunity to direct, or they go, we're going to make this TV show or whatever, you just go, I can't believe it. I did it again. And you think, I never thought. It just gives you another to get it.
yeah,
And it just gives you that extra, I can keep doing this because you've done it so, a number of times, but it happens. And I'm just absolutely convinced if something is good, it's going to find its way somewhere. And that's a nice way to make a living if you can.
It's such a great message. What do you have that you're working on right now that people can look forward to? And where's the best place for people to learn more about you? I know that you have your great, movies that you've written. Anything else that we can send people?
I mean, I have one movie that I have a movie that I was doing in big action thriller that I was going to do in 2016. It was actually greenlit and financed with a guy named Lorenzo de Bonaventura was the producer. He's the producer of Transformers. And he read the script. He really loved it or liked it. He called me over to his house. We talked about it. He says, I want you to direct it. So I had his weight. And suddenly you got the money. He gets the money. I fly to New York, Bruce Willis, I get him involved, get Gary Oldman involved. And I'm directing this huge movie. Now, what eventually happened is, as it always sometimes does, the finance guys didn't have ultimately what they said they had. There was so it fell flat. Okay, so I've had the script, but I knew it was a great script. And I went, one day I know it's gonna. But it's been sitting around. The pandemic hits. Nobody wants to make movies with guns. Nobody wants to see an action male star anymore. This is like a Steve McQueen thing that I kind of wrote. And now, after all that, now people are kind of going, hey, we kind of want to see those action movies again. So I started to see that in the marketplace. So I just kind of put it out to a couple places, people that I know, producers went, hey, we really like this. And now that movie looks like it's going and I'm directing it. And now, do I believe it? I believe it when it happens. But that was, 2016 was almost 7 years ago.
Wow.
And now, here we go again. I got another crack at the thing. And now it's like, who's going to be the actor? And now we're looking at that. So it's not, again, material is good, got another shot. And maybe now's even a better time for me to do it. So that's the one I'm really excited about. And then I have one TV show that looks really promising that I really like as well. So those are the two that are right on the burn. So anyway.
I got one more question that I want to ask because I think people will love it. And it came to me. I'll be upset if I don't ask.
Yeah.
Who is out of all, I'm not going to ask your favorite actor, but like who out of all of the people that or directors, actors, directors, who was the most interesting or memorable that was really like, wow, this person is super talented? Like who
As far as living, dead, past, someone I met, that kind of thing.
yeah. Yeah. Like living dead doesn't matter.
Okay. The one person that I knew pretty well that I was really impressed with, and not only because of the body of work that they had done, but who they were, how inspirational they were, how honest they were, straight shooting, fatherly they were, all kinds of stuff, was a guy named Alan Ladd Jr.
Hmm.
Alan Ladd Jr., he was the head of Fox for many years, and he was the guy behind Star Wars. He was guy. If you look at his movies, it's incredible. But he was a tasteful, humble guy. His father was Alan Ladd, the actor from the 40s and 50s. He had, I played tennis at his house every day. He took me under his wing a little bit, and he became a guy that he was one of the real deal guys. He was honest. He would help you. He was caring, and he just didn't feel like you were in the Hollywood system yet. He was born in Hollywood and he was very much of that, but somehow he managed to kind of step above it. So he was one of the greats for me.
Very cool. I love it, man. This was such a great conversation. I am so fascinated by this and your journey. And man, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing. This is just there's so much more we talk about. And I'm just like,
No, I
thank you.
appreciate it. I hope I didn't. I know I kind of talk there's just so much you when you're, this. So I hope I didn't blab my head up, but that was really fun. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate it. And the more detail, the better, because I think sometimes like people love to know that stuff. They love to just get in there and know all these things. And sometimes we don't think we need to share it. And then it's like that's the stuff that people are like, oh, I loved hearing about that. Right. So yeah, thank you so much, man. If you had one piece of advice just for people to walk away with today, let's say the creators, the writers, the actors, whatever, what would that piece of advice be for them?
Okay, well, this is going to be a tough one too. And not now, you almost have to fake your way through this, like act it. But is to realize that no matter who you're meeting, whether there's high up, what experience they have, whatever, you don't be intimidated or give too much credit, because it's your voice, the thing you have is really, you might not have as much experience, obviously, as these people, but they're just as clueless as ever. And again, it goes back to the line that I said at the beginning of, he's the guy, William Goldberg. No one knows anything. And that's true. And when you really know that, and you go, that guy's just as scared, and when I was shut up after this, but when I meet someone, I'm going, they've got some pain in their life, creatively, financially, whatever. I'm going to help. I'm going to give something that's going to address that pain. So it's a different mindset. Like I go in thinking, oh, I have something that's sellable. But I don't look at people and go, oh my God, I don't mind going, no, I think that's incorrect. This is how I feel. And this is what I would do, whatever. And they'll come over to your side if you believe in yourself. But if you immediately go, oh, it's so-and-so, it's over because you're giving them too much credence and they don't have the answer.
Mm.
No one does. It's like stockbrokers. They go, if you do this, they have no clue. So you just have to go in with you have a point of view. And you just have to go in with that and go, this is what I believe and what I feel. I mean, I'll work with you and we'll collaborate, but this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then they go, yeah, if they jump on board, you're in. So that's why.
Wow. That was so perfect. Harris, thank you so much, brother.
Hey, you got it. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast if you aren't already doing so. We're also wanting some love on the YouTube. Like I've mentioned before, we really didn't pay attention to YouTube the first few years, and now we want to build that thing. So go ahead, subscribe there if you guys want to watch this. And I love you all. I appreciate all of you so much. And if you feel somebody needs this episode, share it. It's always the greatest way to give back. And leave a review if you feel called to do so as well. Much love, everybody. We'll catch you next time.